Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my pleasure to have Lisa Greer on board. Lisa is a fundraising coach, nonprofit changemaker, major donor, and author of the best-selling book Philanthropy Revolution. Lisa's on a mission to save giving by providing a clear path to success, supported by data, statistics, and interviews. With her help and direction, the nonprofit world will see its donors engaged and energized, their organizations sustainable and with increased impact, and a more honest philanthropic culture that will create a larger and more loyal donor pool. Currently, Lisa serves as a commissioner of the California State Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, where she sits on the executive committee. She also serves on the international board of the New Israel Fund, Alliance for Middle East Peace, and as the executive committee of the Cedars-Sinai Board of Governors. She's also served as commissioner and chair of the Beverly Hills Cultural Heritage Commission and trustee of the Jewish Community Foundation of LA, and as a board member of many organizations, including the LA District Attorney's Crime Prevention Foundation, Make-A-Wish of Greater LA, Girl Scouts, and others. She's recently been appointed to the City of Beverly Hills Community Charitable Foundation. Earlier in her career, Lisa was a studio executive at NBC and Universal Studios, and she founded and led several companies in the digital media and entertainment businesses. Lisa co-founded and sits on the board of Tandem Care Planning, a new business that elevates the home care experience for both care seekers and caregivers. A native of LA, Lisa holds a bachelor's degree in history from UCLA and an MBA from Pepperdine University. She's the proud mother of 3 millennials, 2 Gen Zs, and 2 dogs. Wow, what an accomplished lady. Welcome.
I don't like to be bored, so there.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. I read your book, and it was absolutely an amazing book. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes for those that have yet to buy it, so that folks can purchase it. It's really a great read, and we'll get to that in a little bit later. But just to start with, one of the questions I usually ask, it has to do with canvassing, and actually it throws all of my American guests off. It's actually solicitation, but when I use the word solicitation, the first thing that comes into my mind is prostitution. So I tend not to use the word solicitation. And in Canada, we're very much the Queen or King's English now, so we tend to use canvass. It's a little less formal. But you've been fortunate to be on both sides of the equation in life as a donor as well as a fundraiser. So what is the best canvas you were on, and what made it the best canvas?
So thank you for asking the question. It's people often think that I'm just complaining about bad situations with the intention of doing good, but there are a few that have been just fantastic. So my favorite one, which I talk about in the book too, and a lot of people are familiar with, is with an organization called Big Sunday here in Los Angeles that is started out as something called a Mitzvah Day, which people do all over the place once a year. Then his became Sundays, then it became every day. They partnered with the mayor's office here in Los Angeles, and they do work bringing together volunteers from all over the city and a bit beyond to do things that are good for people in the city. So it's part of their mission is to accomplish something like doing a Habitat for Humanity or something like that. But the other part of the mission, equally as important, is to get volunteers energized and excited and feel good about what they're doing. And he thinks they're equally as important, which I think is already really cool. But we actually called him in when I first started giving, because I wanted to give money. I wanted to do something locally. When we give, there was no really rule book about how you do this. And so it seemed to make sense to me that we would give some things internationally, some things to, in our case, the Jewish community, some things to some money to healthcare issues that were impacted by that kind of thing. But we also wanted to do something locally. So at that time, and again today, there's a huge issue about people about food insecurity, being food insecure in Los Angeles. And so I thought, you know what, I'm new at this. I'm just going to ask the question: what would it cost to feed, make sure that there's enough food for anybody who needs food in Los Angeles for 3 months? And I literally just made that up. And I just had no idea. So I thought, let's
Right.
get a starting point. And I asked around, like, who would know the answer to that question? And people sent me to this guy, David,
Right.
from Big Sunday, who was a TV writer turned volunteer social justice guy. And so I invited him to come to our house and talk about, could he give me the answer? And he wouldn't give me the answer. That was the best part about the whole thing, which seems weird. But because I said, I want to know how much it would cost. And he said, I don't know. And I have to tell you, still, I love that answer. I want someone to be honest. I love that answer. I know you're a relationship guy. I'm a relationship person. That just made sense. So I was a little surprised, but I thought, okay, good. And he says, I'm going to go find out. I said, all right.
Right.
And he came back 2 weeks later and he said, can I meet with you? I said, sure. Can you give me the answer? And he said, well, I'd rather meet with you in person. I said, okay. So he came to the house and we talked and I said, so what's the answer? What's the answer? And he said, the answer is I'm not going to give you the answer. And I said, what? And he said, because it's not sustainable. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So we've come up with a better solution that is sustainable. And they actually did create a methodology that worked to be able to fill up those food banks. And it's been going on now for almost 9 years.
Wow.
And it was done through really bringing together this thing that I talked about at the beginning, bringing together volunteers from all over and have people at all different levels of the community, all different people, young, old, et cetera, be responsible for helping to fill up those food banks at some point each month or each year. And it's called the End of the Month Club, and you can look it up online, and it's been incredibly successful, does a lot over Thanksgiving, and I'm not sure about Canadian Thanksgiving, but hopefully. And I just thought that was just a great model.
Wow. That is amazing. And so I assume that you have just stayed on. It's been your 10 years.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing is that he sends me these wonderful updates a couple times a year. They're not big, fancy, formal things. They're just an email. I love that. This is what we've accomplished. And if something really great happens, he'll email me. And then he'll ask if we can do this again. There's no assumption. There's no, would you renew? No, would you consider doing this again? But we've actually been able to lower the amount of money we give him because it's such a kind of fine-tuned organization now that they don't really need the extra money. So they've been doing really well with just people who all over the city who automatically give to the End of the Month Club. So it's been a big success.
Wow. Amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thanks to David.
Yeah. And if we were to flip it, so we've all been on these canvases or asks or solicitations that have just been dogs. So I'm sure you have an experience, and if anyone who's read your book, there's a whole ton of them that are in there. But does any one of them really stand out for you as kind of the worst solicitation that you were on, and why?
Wow, there's just so many to choose from.
Unfortunately.
I think the worst one was one that I talk about in the book because it was so dramatic. So I was asked by an organization if I would consider, actually by a friend, if I would consider being honored for one of their events. And I had just started doing this, and I thought honoring was an honor, which I guess it is sort of an honor, but it's also an ask for money. So, but I was still learning that. So and every time I go through these, I think about all the people like me who haven't been a donor all their lives and are in the same position, and they have to go through that same learning curve. So I sat down, and so the girlfriend came and she said, let me bring these people from this organization. I said, fine. And we sat at a table at a little coffee shop, nothing fancy. And the first thing they did is they started complimenting me on my hair and my makeup and my purse and my all this stuff. I know. And I was like, what are you doing? And we're like literally at this like little malt shop kind of thing. And I just, I couldn't understand, like, why are you doing this? So, and they didn't seem to understand that I was uncomfortable. That was one of the really big things that I haven't talked about is that they had no sense of how I was responding. And that, I mean, I made it, if they'd only looked at me, they would have known that I was kind of cringing. So, but then they gave me this pitch that they wanted to honor me. And I, at least by that point, had done some research. And I said, well, what's involved on my end? And they said, oh, nothing. We'll just kind of give some names or whatever. It's going to be fine. And, and it'll be great. And I said, well, okay, but I'm not really sure that this organization, it's not one that I've supported in the past. Actually, my parents had supported it, but I had not. for many, many years. It was a long time ago. And so I said, well, I've done some research on you, and I'm interested in this particular program that you do. Can you tell me how that's different from another program that I'd heard of? And that wasn't done by them. And they looked at me like, they were almost annoyed that I had actually done research. Yeah.
And they came with their little plan book, right? And you're throwing them off the rails.
I just like, yeah, it's exactly what happened. So I said, well, so can you tell me how it's different? And it was clear by their answer. They didn't even know what the program was I was referring to, even though it was discussed on their website. And all they needed to do was say, like David Levinson, say, gee, you know what? I don't know. I'm sorry. We have so many programs. I'll go check it out. But they didn't do that. And they made up the answer. And I knew the answer was made up. And it wasn't true. And I had this happen with one other organization once where I said, how are you different? Both of these are very large, huge institutions. And I said, well, how is yours different than another organization? This was Make-A-Wish. When I was on, I can actually tell you the name. It was on Make-A-Wish. And my daughter, when she was 10, had cancer and was actually at a hospital where well, I'll back it up for a second. I didn't even know she was eligible for Make-A-Wish at that point, but I had worked in the studios, and the studios supported something called the Starlight Foundation, which is also in Europe and all over. And I had always heard of them as an alternative to Make-A-Wish. So I said to the Make-A-Wish people when they were first talking to me, how are you different than Starlight Foundation? And they said, oh, Starlight Foundation, we don't even think that's around anymore. That's just like, I don't know, it's some old thing. And then my daughter's in the hospital, and they roll over to her bed this video game monitor thing, and it says, supported by Starlight Foundation. And I thought, they just lied to me. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So it was really, similar thing happened here at this one with this organization at the malt shop. And they just made up the answer, which was, and there was no, can I go find out later or nothing. They just made up the answer. And then it was, okay, when are you going to do this? And how are you going to, help us and all of that? And then the event ended up, I agreed to do it. And the event ended up being kind of a disaster. They made money, but they were yelling at my staff, yelling at people in the kitchen. They had no food. They had like crudité and a huge bar. So people got really drunk. And then people were walking around asking me for a name of the local pizza place that'll deliver quickly because they were so hungry. And
oh my, I
couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. So all of that whole thing. And then they called me after, wanted me to do another event. And it's like, not only is that not happening, we're not giving to you. We're not going to have anything to do with you anymore. And I guarantee you that woman had no idea why. Like she just was that out of touch with reality of what was going on in the situation. So that's kind of the anti-relationship way of asking people for money.
Yeah. And, I was reading in your book, and it's one of the kind of adages I always live with when it comes to fundraising. It's the truth is your friend, right? So even if you go to a donor and, they ask about a program that's really not going well or it's having problems, I still believe the truth is your friend because they may help you in solving that problem. But if you always tell them everything is rosy and we're the best and, no one else knows what they're doing, it's disingenuous and people are going to stop coming and involving you.
Well, in addition to that, I will be saying as a donor, why do you need me then if everything's going so well?
Right.
I got to tell you, the minute that they say, and I'm probably saying for you, the minute that they say, you know what, here are our challenges, I start trusting them more instantly.
Yeah. And it's a relationship thing. And when you kind of open the kimono, you're doing it to kind of bring them in and to say, listen, these are our problems. This is why we're doing it. That's kind of like case 101, right? No one would be fundraising if everything was hunky-dory. You don't need money. So you have to find, well, here's the problem and a little bit of money will solve it. And this is how life is going to be afterwards.
And it is completely, I'm dumbfounded that people don't see that, what you just said. I don't understand why. It just seems so obvious.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
So they can go to my website. Thank you for asking. They can go to my website, lisagreer.com. Pretty simple. They can go to philanthropyrevolution.com if that's easier to remember. And on there, you can find my tips of the week, which I give every Monday, and I've got hundreds of them. You can link to subscribe to the newsletter, see some of my previous podcasts and webcasts, learn about the books, etc. So It'd be great if people go and sign up for the newsletter. Would be great.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. This is a real pleasure.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.